Hey guys, welcome to the WeddingPros podcast. Today we have a special guest, Rich Ferri. How you doing?
Very good.
Good.
Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be awesome. So Rich is our friend for years back. Rich is the owner, operator, cinematographer of Rangely Films. Is that just your wedding brand?
Correct. Yeah.
And then what do you call your production work? Is that just Rich Ferri?
Exactly. Yeah. I made the differentiation about a year and a half, 2 years ago, because just folks were getting like brides were hitting me up and be like, "So you shoot a lot of rap videos? Do you have any weddings?"
Yeah. So you're based out of Providence, right?
Yeah.
And I would say Rich is one of the more talented cinematographers in our area, not just with weddings, but we're on WeddingPros, so we're talking about weddings. But Rich, let's just get started. So how did you get into filmmaking in general?
Yeah, like a little bit, maybe like less traditional, but I think a lot of film people started in music, and I did too. So my path went from audio engineering. That was like my first real like technical love, and I was really drawn to like making music by way of tools. And I really, like a lot of musicians, found the process of making music to be fulfilling, and I found the process of producing and like learning the gear fulfilling. And so that is exactly the headspace that I enter filmmaking from, which is like, I do love images and I love image making, but I have a lot of like appetite for the tech. I never burn out on learning gear and like mastering gear as a means to make art. And to me, they live together. And so that differentiated me from musicians who were interested in making music and touring and playing shows. And I was like, I'll learn the tech. And so when I went in, when everyone started taking up like DSLR cameras and taking photos, I was like, hey, I have an aptitude to learn the video side, which is like admittedly just so much techier before you get to make art. And I was like, I'm into that, and I can justify the thinking and learning of the video side of things as a means to making the art. And I really, the second I started doing that, people that I was making these little like projects for, little bio pieces, whatever, responded in a way that was like overwhelming. And I was like, oh, maybe I should do more of this. And that's like kind of the world told me, hey, try it more. And I got a lot of like good feedback from some of the earliest clients.
So for you, because I think I think you're making a true statement when you talk about video people naturally being people who gravitate towards processes and gear and things like that.
Freaking nerds.
They're nerds. We're nerds. At the core of it,
Total nerds.
Because I'm coming from the same boat. I learned web design, coding, music, all these things, and it was natural for me to be like, editing in LE, I want to learn that. How do I do that? Like, how can I make that? Like, everyone else would be hanging out, and I would go to the cable access place and learn how to cut tape together.
Right. Wow.
That was what I love to do. And so I think, like, that's a lot of people's journey, I feel like, in this particular niche. But also what I love about what you're saying is the process is just as much the art as the final product.
100%.
And I think some people maybe don't feel that way. Maybe they don't care how it gets made as long as it gets made. I think one of the things I've known about you, I remember one of the first conversations I had with you, you were just ripping about how people who can't roll focus.
Yep.
And I remember
I
thinking,
was scared
like,
because I was like, I hope I don't work for Rich, because one day he might hate me because I suck at rolling focus.
I'll still admittedly be like, what, wrong direction.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh crap.
I can just imagine Rich in the edit bay being like, mother ever.
Well, it's a headspace thing. It's like certain people are built in certain ways. And like when I first started, I couldn't keep track of like which direction my hand moved as someone moved towards me and away from me. And like being stuck, like facing my own edits later and watching the focus pump early on was so infuriating. And I looked at like the breadth of technical things I've been forced to learn over my life in order to do recording music, in order to do filmmaking. And I was like, this thing is not technical enough that I'm not good at it.
See, I'm
And
gonna-
it drove me insane. And so I would literally practice because it would drive me nuts that this pretty simple concept was stumping me over and over and over again. And like,
I would argue that it's not simple though, because when you think about all the things you need, when I try to teach someone how to roll focus, I realize, oh, depth of focus with aperture.
yeah, there's a lot of variables.
There's all these variables that
and
go
it
into it.
exponentially gets more
Yes.
shallow.
And then not only the fact that you're never standing directly in front of the person, so they're accelerating in the frame at a different ratio depending on how this is the nerdiest thing ever. But like you're watching a person walk in an angle, you're shooting, am I shooting 2.8? Or
yeah, it matters. It matters. But
It's it is. There's a reason why that's someone's full-time job.
right. The focus puller is, and I'm not focus puller level by no means, but I get the job.
But-
done.
I think you're right. With we tell our guys all the time, like if you want to be a good shooter, you have to get in the edit bay and learn. Like, and we've just found with all of our guys, everyone who wants to become a good shooter, come in, edit a couple days a week, and actually see the footage because you're gonna kick yourself.
I don't
in the
understand
butt.
guys that want to give their edits away.
yeah.
Like,
I
Yeah.
belong to a handful of like film groups for DPs specifically, and and like one of the interesting things when you leave like the small market world, the videographer world, and when you move into like the film production and film set world, to be a jack of all trades can actually read like you're an amateur, and so
totally.
folks specialize.
Yeah.
And one of the odd downsides to becoming hyper specialized is that a DP, a director of photography, can go many years in their career without having been forced to edit their own footage, and some of like
or even touch a camera anymore.
totally and this distance
Well, and
allows you to be hyper specialized, and you might be really increasing your skill set in one area, but one of the biggest for me, and I saw other folks comment on this in this particular conversation, was like the process of painfully watching your own flaws and like painfully watching your own process via the footage later is where the greatest learning happens, because like you will never forget it again when you see those mistakes and those jitters and like those things that you think when you're in the moment, hey, this will probably be excusable.
You rationalize
in the edit.
it and-
When you're forced to realize the areas that, hey, that actually did get fixed by an edit, or hey, this can't be fixed by an edit. You do those a handful of times and you're stuck with that edit yourself, and you do learn those lessons.
I was telling a guy last week, I was like, why are you cutting your drone shot so quick? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I need handles. Like, I gotta, I cannot roll, I can't do a crossfade on that shot you just made.
Right.
And he was like, and I'm like, you need to shoot for edit.
Right.
You have to think about giving me the handles on the shot.
Right.
So I can
Can't do a
finish.
checkerboard cross.
I can't do my
basket
hard
lead
fade.
if I
Well, we're shooting trees, so we're gonna do a tree fade.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Christmas tree. But like until you edit, you don't think that way. And I've realized like editing is my first love. I'm meh about shooting. Like I like to shoot, but I really like to edit.
That's why we're exact opposites. Because I like shooting.
I
I'm
disagree
total
with you
shooter.
completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like to edit. I like to direct. I like to think about what we're making.
Right.
Make sure it gets made. That's
Right.
what's important to me. If someone's better with the camera in their hand, I'll let them do all the shooting. I take no pride in it. Even though I don't mind shooting, but I'll say to someone like, "That's not going to work in the edit bay."
Right.
And I realize this person doesn't know.
Right.
Because they're thinking, "Oh, I don't want to shoot too much because then it's going to be annoying in post production." I'm like, "No, you can't shoot too much. You can definitely shoot too little."
Right. That's a great message.
Like I need handles on all your shots.
Did you feel like you hit like a creative wall when you got to the wedding industry? And how did you, I guess, get through that kind of wall? What was that transition like when you started doing weddings?
Weddings came very early. So weddings were there in the beginning. There was never really a transition into weddings. When I was a musician, I was in a band with Jarrett Blinkhorn, who does JB Horn Film.
Yeah.
And Jarrett and I have been friends since we were little kids. And Jarrett was filming videos. Whenever I was making a music video or doing my own performance, Jarrett was always the one filming. So I learned watching Jarrett. And Jarrett entered the wedding industry before I ever got into photography or video. And he brought me on as a second shooter. And he really was my mentor and really brought me up and taught me basically everything that I know about cameras and cinematography, he also is in both worlds, and he's in horror and like cinema world and weddings. But the overlap was enough, and also I was on the receiving end of his shooting so much.
That's a weird dichotomy.
Did you say horror?
Yeah, he's like a horror film director.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, maybe I just.
Sorry, I just grazed over that. But yeah, he's a really accomplished director and also great camera operator.
Yeah, that's really neat.
And also just like a child of the DIY world. And so I was able to learn like a lot of practical and technical knowledge from doing sound for Jarrett's films and then like second shooting for weddings for him. And so we kind of he really like ushered me into the wedding industry, meaning like, hey, this is a thing that you could do. You could also help me out. Hey, also, one of my main entry into the wedding industry was that Jarrett had a phone meeting with a client who he absolutely fell in love with. Like, they were incredible. And then through some reason, either double booking or something, he wasn't available to do it. And he was like, I don't want this couple to like leave our ecosystem. Will you learn to shoot weddings in 6 months? And I was like, yeah. And so my wife was a bridesmaid in 2 weddings. And so I shot those weddings as practice to ramp up for that one that Jarrett had sent me. And that was sort of my entry to the field. So weddings have always been something that I've not only, I didn't have to just break into them. Weddings have sort of been there. Weddings were where I learned technical stuff about how to work in complex light. Weddings are where I learned to follow focus. But more than anything, like weddings were my first paid gigs. And so weddings to me are like something that I have a lot of gratitude for, because they not only taught me these like really difficult skills in a really fast way, in a really high stakes way, but they also were the highest paying thing that I was doing. And so weddings also afforded me my first round of real gear, which is how I was able to actually leave my job and go freelance and like enter this world. So I have a lot of love for what weddings have meant in my life. And so any sort of creative hurdles, because I'd like to talk more about like the creative challenges of the wedding world compared to like the cinema world.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting
thing. It's founded
thing.
in like a deep gratitude, because I never have forgotten what my life is because of like the wedding industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we should dive in there. I think to kind of preface, and Jay mentioned it a little bit, was just talking about your work. I think your work definitely stands out. When I see your work, I'm like, oh, that's Rich Ferri. You know, that's like, someone wouldn't have to tell me. I'm like, oh, that's Rich's stuff.
I just, as a commentary, I was watching it. You sent me some newer stuff and some wedding stuff. I think it's changed. I think it still looks like your work, but I can see some evolutions. But the thing I noticed is like, there's a lot of guys out there that we talked about. Like, I like the Henry Martin's work a lot. I find it to be really inspiring. There's people like White and Reverie, and there's people like Sculpting with Time who are doing, I don't even know how they have time to make those films.
Yeah.
You're just seeing, and you're like, did these people work with these people for like 5 days to make this movie? I don't know how they made it. The biggest thing I've noticed with your work is I know that it was just shot the same way my stuff was, but it looks better. It's just this is not in a pejorative way.
No.
It's a normal wedding film shot in a cinematic way, not a cinematic film built around a wedding.
I know what you're saying. I shoot, if you were a guest at a wedding,
Yes.
I'm doing the same damn thing.
Yep.
You know, I'm shooting like everybody else. I'm shooting on like small body Sonys and like little handheld gimbals and sweating and running around like a lunatic.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look any different. It doesn't look extra cool or like extra it doesn't look different.
You don't have them at like 5 different engagement sessions and make them float in the
and you're right.
ocean
Like
with
the
a
wedding
drone over
happens
them.
inside of the regular day, and the wedding is stuck in the country clubs and stuck in the hotel rooms. It's not anointed in some way. Like, I'm not shooting weddings that are all in Iceland and like Tahoe and that
Well,
kind
and
of
I think
stuff.
that's important. If you're listening and you're a person who, I've seen several questions in various message boards about people who are really frustrated, and they're like, oh, I can't make my films look like Sculpting with Time.
Right.
Where are they making these movies? How are they meeting these brides?
How do you get your bride to spend 20 grand on your wedding film?
Yeah, Rich,
Yeah.
like Ray Roman making this, he's shooting with an actual crane.
Right.
And
Right.
it's like,
It's a totally different beast.
What they're doing is awesome. I'm not knocking it, but I think what I want to impress on someone is like, go look at Rangely Films and just shoot better.
So that's sort of like, thank you for saying that. I mean, I think that's it's very flattering to hear from like other incredible cinematographers. But the reality is like, there's a tension inside of weddings, photo for sure, but I think even stronger inside of video. There's this tension that says your goal is to make this as artful and as beautiful as possible, and your other goal fights against that, which is that you want to appear as chill and laid back and a steward of a very chill day for your couple.
Create the right energy.
Yeah,
which is
and also create the
not
right energy
my natural energy
for your guest experience. And so those two fight against each other all the time. And so the only reason that I think that you're seeing something that's sort of something is elevating about the stuff that I'm doing to your eyes. And I think the only reason is that like the way that I'm doing that balance is just favoring a look slightly more than somebody else. So like my thought process around image making, just like how I'm working with light, how I'm choosing to shoot it from a technical perspective, and also just like a staging perspective, moving and nudging people and events, is maybe just going an extra step, thinking about it a little bit more, and just being like hyper intentional to say like, this image that I'm seeing on my monitor, is this as artful as I can possibly make it? And if I were to sacrifice 15 to 30 more seconds right now, could I elevate it further? So this is not, could I bring in a crane and a crew? That's not 15-second nudges. But like, can I make subtle nudges every single time that I see an opportunity to make a nudge where I can just elevate it a little bit?
How do you-
think the sum of those pieces is what makes a video look like a home movie or something that's like cinematic, but not cinematic in the way that we talked about, these sort of like
Real
internet
cinema.
people.
Yeah.
Cinematic inside of a Marriott hotel and a country club wedding. So within reason.
Yes. How do you find the other thing I notice is it does look like you're getting what you want usually out of the shot.
Yeah.
And I think that obviously comes with you understanding where the compromises are. And so I know you're not always getting what you want. I know oftentimes you're compromising. You're making the best of which is the opposite of real production. If you've never done real production, obviously there are compromises made, but like it's not unusual to be like, hey, we're going to be, staging this lighting for 3 hours until we get it right. Which I know a lot of wedding filmmakers don't have the first clue about production and lighting and the things that go into it. But I do know that there's a lot of times where you're getting the shot that you want. You're getting a bride to do something that you want. You're getting the face that you want.
Right.
How do you find, just working with the couples to get them to maybe play a little more cinematic on camera, and then B, working with other, especially photographers, but maybe planners, but other wedding vendors to also come across in a way that they're going to want to refer you, or they're going to not feel like you're getting in the way and not creating that tension. Because I know in our industry with wedding videographers, a lot of these people have they don't know how to reconcile what they perceive to be the fact that they're totally marginalized on the wedding day. They don't know how to.
You're referring to videographers
Yes,
specifically.
videographers.
Yeah.
I don't have this problem. I don't personally experience it, but I'm very assertive. If I really need something, I'll get it. But mostly Jared and I are pretty chill to just get what we can get. But how do you reconcile those things?
I hear two different questions, which is like me to couple and like me as a function of the group, meaning me, couple, and photographer.
Yes.
And those are separate. So
Totally.
The simplest, like high impact thing that I've started to do is remove the me couple factor. I've started to find my people in the New England world who are my photographers that I've worked with, and we've said like, oh, I see you. You are my people. Like we're doing a portrait session together and I pose a couple and the photographer's like, I'm stealing that. And then the photographer poses them and I'm like, oh, I'm stealing that. And we're feeding off of each other's energy. So the simplest high impact choice I've done is be like, I really want to know that I can primarily shoot weddings with photographers that I know not only their visual style, but their personality.
What is it
style.
about Joe Lauren that makes it so good for video? Because
So,
I feel the same
well,
way.
Joe
I've
is-
shot with Joe a couple times, and I tell every guy, "Oh, your footage is going to look awesome."
Right, because
Joe
of
is so kinetic.
Well, so Joe is not only a photographer that I like admire and love, but also like a very close friend and a creative friend, and now someone who I shoot weddings with a lot. And Joe and I have been lucky enough to do a lot of styled shoots together and like really creative stuff where there's no restrictions, where you have do-overs. And so we've gotten a chance to see what each other would do in an ideal scenario. Hey, how would you behave with a model and the opportunity to do redos? How would you behave? And so Joe and I are particularly attuned to each other, and we're really calibrated. But he represents for me like sort of the ideal scenario, because visually we're looking for the exact same thing, and personality-wise we're going to coach couples and we're going to behave the same way. But that you can't have that as a starting videographer, and you can't have that if you work in larger markets. And so when I leave the Rhode Island world and I'm in Boston or I'm in Maine, I'm going to be working with other people. And so that's the dream scenario, right? So the other scenario is like what most people will experience, and what I've always experienced up until very recently, is two things: expectation setting between me and my couples, and sort of explaining to them on the front end, very, very much in those phone calls, hey, please really watch this video that I sent you. And now let me really concretely explain to you some of the words that were being said in the room or during that portrait session to make a shot like that happen. Really clearly explaining how I do my thing to couples so that they're not surprised, and that they really early on the front end go like, oh, this is not my guy. And I can say like, oh, you're not my couple. It's very, very clear in those phone calls how I do my thing. And then the other piece is like, how do you work that little community of photographer, videographer, couple, and how do you deal with, what was the word that you used? Because I thought it was perfect. Like the dissonance that happens between, there's like a competitiveness because, videographers have been historically marginalized because photo is more expensive and more frameable, and the video is sort of an afterthought.
Yeah, and even just when you're on the food chain, you're eating last.
Totally. And so there's that tension is one that I've unfortunately had some of the most awful experiences of my professional career, inside it and outside of video, have been with photographers who are absolutely incensed that a videographer is involved in this day in some way that's intimate, and they have lost their minds and have become like predatory. They'll actually try to steal the couple in a way that like they don't tell me, or like they're trying to do things that create tension. But these are not my people. They're not the people that when you see them and you're like, I like you, we're gonna have a great day together. They're the kind of photographers that are from a different mindset, and they're from potentially a different era, because the videographer with the tripod on the rolly wheels on the dance floor has probably created a negative impression on them.
Yeah,
and now they're like, I'm gonna bulldoze through
They have
anything.
PTSD with videographers.
So I think I understand where they come from, but at the end of the day, it's extremely disruptive to my process.
Yeah. I think, I hear a lot of couples, and I was talking to some people about it earlier this week, other videographers, and talking about hearing from couples like, hey, this videographer that we went to a wedding over the weekend, and the videographer was super duper intrusive, and I think, they are marginalized, the videographer, because that's the impression of them. And, there's a lot of videographers giving us kind of a bad name. I don't think you do that, because it's all about like intimacy and like during the portrait session, and, for the most part, like we're wanting to be unobtrusive. I like that. I like that you actually walk them through beforehand, like, hey, this is how I get this kind of shot, because you are finding those people. I think we've kind of based our model on being just documenting, and so we kind of are like, we're not going to risk that, because we've had those bad encounters too. Yeah. We're like, we're going to take a step back and just we're shooting, these kind of people. Can you maybe walk through some of like a portrait session with a good photographer, with a Joe Lauren?
Yeah.
Walk through maybe what that looks like. Is it because what we do is usually the photographer's director, they're the person that's going to be filming. We're going to document. There might be a couple shots here and there that we might want to get in.
We'll probably get a gimbal push or someone dancing.
Yeah.
Or two things we'll ask for.
Or like the easy, like the photographer's like, all right, let's go back to the tent. Okay. hold hands and I'm just gonna
Yeah,
get you guys
yeah.
film you
We're
guys
pretty
walking or
much
whatever.
based our business model off being the most compliant people in the world.
Yeah.
So just
that
walk
gets
through
you-
the portrait
So
session.
I'm gonna just want
Yeah.
to comment before we do that. That will get you extremely far. I built my entire portfolio on sniping over the photographer's shoulder.
Yeah.
And everything went great until it didn't, which is like I started to establish a look. But by not by my decision. I happened to have found couples that had a look, that got married at a barn, had a photographer that was on brand and posed them in a way, and I was like, I am killing it. And then the photographer changed, and I got a totally different style of photographer who was shooting with like umbrellas,
Yep.
flash, front-facing flash, front-facing sun, 2 p.m. portrait session, exposing for the background, and this kind of photographer, dip, 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 go to kiss, don't kiss, hold
Yeah.
it,
Oh,
hold it,
yeah.
And I had never encountered that before, and then I realized that a lot of what I was good at, I wasn't good at. I was just stealing the pose from another photographer.
Exactly.
And that's when I realized, like, I need to, next time I'm with a person, a character like Joe Lauren, who has this energy on set, you know, that I need to not only work with folks like that, but when I'm stuck without him, I need to learn what is that energy that person like him is bringing that's resulting in these like gorgeous images that I now learn ain't me. I wasn't doing it. I was actually stealing the pose from the photographer. So it came from the idea that like I used to do that, and I used to want to not be a burden until I realized that like I cannot deliver my products because the photographer is posing them in the opposite light of what I can work with in opposite poses. And so I started to realize I had to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for what's
I will
funny,
answer your question.
Yeah.
I will get that.
no, it makes sense. It's funny that you brought up Joe again, because like it's interesting. I mean, everyone has a person like that. I think hopefully every videographer's worked with a person who understands, even if they don't mean to understand, they understand the values of movement and natural light and couple interaction. You need a person that makes people talk to each other, it makes people touch each other, it makes people kiss, makes people posing. There are some poses that are fine, but like it never looks good on video to almost kiss.
Yeah.
Oh, turn my camera off. I don't even want to look at that. But I will say I've had the same experiences. I remember working with a couple, Joe, and then a couple other people who I'm like, wow, why does this look so good? I feel like a good shooter.
Yeah.
And then other times I'll work with someone, I'm like, I suck at
So
this.
let me answer Jared's original question because it's related to this. So, when I speak, so the process of running a portrait session begins a year in advance on the phone call.
Yeah.
And that's really the big differentiation. It's a year in advance, taking myself out of the passenger seat and influencing the path of the day. So like timeline and light are the third questions I ask. What is your wedding date? Who is your photographer? And what time are we doing portraits? That's my process. Then we talk about price and everything else. Like that is the order of things. So like, and I can't take credit for that. That's Joe's process. And Joe taught me that, you know, about being like, our cameras shoot tiny little low quality crap JPEGs when you're shooting video.
I always tell guys.
And we don't have the luxury of being handed terrible light and salvaging it later. So when I recognized that my ability to do a great job rely on it being in better and more flattering light, I brought that into the conversation really early. The second thing I do with couples on the phone is explain to them that like, I'm going to do my very best to be that thing that you guys described. I'm going to do my very best to be this fly on the wall, chill dude, documentary guy. I'll play that character. During our portrait session, you'll hear from me. And then you won't hear from me again, and I'll disappear again. And I promise you that I won't pose you much, but I'm going to own a part of that portrait session. And then I pause and say, how's this feeling? Like, does this, when you look at my videos and you look at what you've seen, did what I just say surprise you? Or does it align with what you expected was going on behind the scenes? And I ask them to sort of like dialogue with me about that. And that really helps because almost all the time, couples will either say, totally, obviously, or they'll say, no, I didn't know that. And then we have a chance to talk about it. And right away, I can start to figure out, will I be able to have a portrait session that's like an active process between me and the photographer? Or was that not even in the cards for them? And maybe we're not a good fit because it's such a huge piece of real estate in my edit and in my timeline. And so like once I explain to them that process, we then decide whether we're into that idea And that is when the timelining piece comes out. So by the time the wedding comes up, I've already talked about the kind of light I'm going to want to put them in. I've already talked to them about the way that I'm going to want to share time with the photographer. And I've already talked to them about the fact that I will be giving them instructions and like yelling funny commands at them the entire time we're working. And that was something that we set really early on. And like that was something that we as a 4-person unit were like really stoked on. You know, like no matter what this day goes like and no matter how many compromises we make in challenging light, like the 4 of us are going to go do that thing we said we're going to do in that light that we said we're going to love. And it's going to be beautiful. And everyone here is going to feel fulfilled. And it's going to be over in 18 minutes. And then we're going to go party again. So like expectation setting about your light, not just about your demeanor, has been really transformative.
I don't know, Jared, but I don't know if we disagree on this or agree on this or how we like. I feel this is how I feel as a filmmaker. I feel like photographers just shoot all day, and a lot of them.
You're gonna get in trouble.
Whatever. A lot of them, I'm like, do you know how even to make a good image? Like, and then I'll see their work and I'll be like, oh yeah, it looks pretty good. But I'm like, this is terrible looking. Why are you settling for this? Why are we not making these people go to this beautiful light? Why are we not making a good image? Why don't you, like, I get that feeling. And like, there are times where I'm like, hey, I really want to do sunset. I'm very insistent on it.
Yeah.
But photographers will be like, meh. They'll say something like, they don't really want to go out. And I'm like, I'm going to make them go out.
Yeah.
And I will go and have that conversation.
Relatable conversation.
And then I will say like, hey, we're going to go out. Do you want to come with me, photographer?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But
I do think, I mean, we talked about this privately before, but I do think that there is a technical reason for that.
Yes.
I think there's an image quality, there's a number of stops of dynamic range, there's a salvageability that comes with shooting raw photos that doesn't exist in video. And there's also another critical thing, which is, I think, overlooked because we always talk about image quality, but we also need to remember portfolio. So like a photographer, for example, could blast out 1 or 2 sort of HDR looking photos where you have a crazy amount of latitude and dynamic range. And then the rest of the portfolio is shot more natural where the windows blow out and the shadows are correct, right? But because for a certain aesthetic they wanted to do one, or they made a black and white image with a film aesthetic that lifted the shadows in a crazy way and blew the highlights down in a crazy way, it doesn't seem weird because the image is viewed
Still.
as a standalone.
Yes.
Whereas in the video, we need to actually say like, hey, I'm going to make a conscious choice to shoot at a certain contrast ratio. That's not a number on your camera. That's like a mental choice that says, I will make sure that I'm always working with shadow and highlight information that lives inside of this arbitrary contrast ratio. And so during the moment, you can look at a high sun moment and a raccoon eye shadow moment, and you can say, hey, that violates my internal idea of what my desired contrast ratio looks like. This can't work. Where the photographer's not having that experience at all. They're just like, oh, I'll either keep this image or I won't, or edit it differently or I won't. I'll just make it disappear. Whereas the video actually lives in conjunction with the clips prior to it.
however it looks in the camera is how it looks.
Right, but it's and you can have a very high contrast moment in it, but the problem is that the video, that clip lives next to your low contrast moments. They can't be separated and posted as individual images. So
4
like,
months later.
they're exactly. And so like part of the tension that exists in the video world is not just that the image quality is lower per frame in a video, but more that the idea of a gallery and a portfolio is like a afterthought for photographers. They might have a general sense of their aesthetic and their portfolio, but they don't need to be. Every image doesn't need to align with the portfolio. Whereas in the video, the images live together. They can't be separated. There's one video.
How do you balance, I guess, the first look that happens at 2 o'clock that you know the client is going to need to see in their video? They talk about it. It's important to them.
Yes.
Or first look with dad outside or whatever.
Totally.
How do you balance that philosophy with that moment that doesn't fit those boxes? Do you just kind of like plow through and do it for a couple seconds and then bail to like the good sunset photos and get back to what your image is? How do you, I guess,
that's a
balance?
really, really great question. I mostly just throw a temper tantrum.
Yeah, cuss at your computer and
So 3 things. Number 1 is try to influence the moment. I walk into the hotel room in the morning, and the first thing I say to the photographer is hi. The second thing I say is like, let's brainstorm first look.
Yeah.
in a way that says, how can I make as few compromises as possible? Here are some general aesthetics that I want, which is like a dark background, a bright light. I want it to serve as a hair light, which is a backlight. And can we make that compromise? Will you be able to do that in whatever bright light environment we're about to do? If I can't have that, the second thing I do is shoot it in a way that has as much recoverable as possible. So I either make a decision on the moment in my monitor whether I'm going to save the highlights and clip the shadows black, or whether I'm going to save the shadows and clip the highlights black. And I know because of the image quality of my image that that's a forever choice. So I make a cut your losses decision. That's option 2, and you roll with it. Option 2 is your cut your losses option, and then I decide in the edit whether I want to destroy it further with an effect. Okay. Maybe I'll make it look like a vintage film because I clip the shadows so badly or clip the highlights so badly that I'll actually lean into the effect. So that's the one that kind of stinks because that's the one that you're forced to say, hey, there's a pretty obvious flaw in this, that there's not enough latitude. Option 3 is the one that I wanted to just mention, which is that sometimes you realize that golden hour and low contrast shooting is not the only way to make a beautiful image. And so option 3 is being surprised. Yeah. It's having a temper tantrum in your own mind and then going out and shooting in totally bad light, measurably bad light, what we always refer to as unflattering light. Yeah. And trying to shed that panic mode and being is there anything beautiful happening in here light-wise? Yeah. And not just in the moment, but and the third option is surprise yourself by saying, hey, this photographer is not a nitwit. This photographer is a skillful artist who has a totally different aesthetic than me. What in the world are they seeing in this moment? Stand with them, shoot it, and be like, huh, it's a little different for me, but it's kind of beautiful.
Well, that's what I was going to say is one thing that's helped me a lot is trying to understand the people I'm working with. Yeah. Going I still sometimes I'm I have walked away from people being that person didn't give a crap and I don't respect them. Not often, but it has happened.
Not often.
But generally what happens is we have differences of opinion and I try to go okay, I know what I had in my head of what I wanted or needed, but I don't, what do they want? What do they need? And why did people hire them?
Right.
Someone liked it and the couple liked it. So how do I lean into that? Yep. And sometimes I can't because I honestly am not that familiar with their work or it just doesn't work. Right. But sometimes you can, like you said, sometimes you can put yourself in their headspace and recalibrate yourself. And then what's cool is then you learn a new skill.
That's it.
Which I've enjoyed is I can shoot a different way.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I'm this sucks. I can't get anything good. And then I just do some weird frame I've never tried.
Do something weird.
Yeah. I think harsh lighting is kind of interesting. I was listening to, you ever hear of the Blacklight podcast?
No.
It's a couple photographers. They just talk about.
They just eat.
They just talk and they have guests on. But they were talking about kind of experimenting with harsh light and not getting complacent with their shooting of like you said, sunset is a videographer's binky. It's just I can always rely on that. But seeing harsh shadow as something that's a place to kind of experiment earlier in the day and experimentation, discovery is fun.
Opening yourself up to say, can I be surprised by this?
Yeah, we were shooting. I was shooting with Ben Hayes last week, and
That's so cool.
And it was a wonderful wedding. But a couple things happened around a couple of the sessions that were no one's control, no one's fault. It was just terrible light.
Okay.
And he had a great plan. We all agreed on it together. And then something happened, and we had to move into the worst light possible. This guy has 200,000 Instagram followers. Right. He's a big deal. He's Ben Hayes. And he was standing in this little piece of grass at 2 p.m., all top lit, shooting all the bradle party. And it was just...
So this wasn't the boardroom photo that the groom made?
He also... it was he just did it, and he was fine with it. And I was like, oh, this happens to him too.
Right.
And it's it happens to everybody, not just us as video. I think videographers have a bit of a persecution complex a little bit because we're some rightful, some just.
Well, it's not even a photo video thing. It's even this expensive, really well-known photographer, the same issues that I go through, this person deals with, and they just deal with it way better than I do. They're just way better than I am.
So you're saying he wasn't having an emotional experience with it? It
he
was just
told me personally, this sucks, I don't like it.
Right.
But he was very professional. He did his very best, and he was just like, yeah, we're just gonna do it because this is what we have to do.
I had a couple this weekend. I was doing photos on Saturday, and
He wasn't a prima donna.
did this awesome. It was this awesome tent wedding. It was overlooking all these cranberry bogs down by the cave. It was awesome. It was sweet looking, and on the outside, the venue had set up all these white bags with like fake candles on the inside in the shape of a heart in the field. And then
Did you bring your drone?
I took a photo of the tent, kind of with that in the background. But I'm like, it's not really my thing. Taking a photo of this heart in the field. But both moms come up to me. They're like,
The moms.
they're like, did you see that heart in the field? I was like, oh yeah, I got a photo of it. They're like, we would love to see. They came up to me separately. We would love to see
I
a
don't
photo
envy
of
this
them in
part
it.
about being a photographer, by the way. No one talks to me.
And I'm
Everyone
like,
talks to photographers.
I know it's an experience. I've
Very
been doing a
different.
lot more photo this year and kind of splitting 50-50. It's different. It's fun. But I was like, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. We can do this photo. And you do the best you can. And I actually brought them out there, and I was like, this is gonna be awful. I was gonna have to like front flash them. And it's pitch black, by the way. Pitch black.
Oh.
It's not even like Twilight time where it's like you can maybe come up with something, but it's pitch black. They come up to me. I'm like, all right, I'll bring a flash out there. Bring them out there. And I started backlighting them. I was like, oh, okay. It's not really my thing, but like they might like this photo. I'm not gonna put it on Instagram, but hey, they're gonna like it. Good
Right.
client experience, and but you come across those.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about creating art
Yeah.
and just this conflict of identity, I think it's easier as a production guy, by the way, for me to make the adjustment because I'm like, well, it's production work and crap happens on production and I'm problem solving. That's
Totally.
really what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, this sucks and how do I fix it? That's what you do all day. On any photographers will go like build their entire portfolio around creating their ideal circumstance.
Yeah.
So I know and I'm probably florists deal with this and wedding planners deal with this when they say turn off the video lights. All those things are like people had an idea in their mind of what they wanted to make as an artist, because I consider everyone their artists in their own way, even the chefs. Everyone's making something that they take pride in, and then having to compromise because of the tension, the velocity, I think, of a wedding day, the fact that your subject is not a professional, they're a person who, how does that kind of, because your commercial work, very controlled,
Yeah.
very buttoned up. And then you get into that scenario and it's just pure chaos. What kind of like exercise are you doing in your mind and how, like really more like existentially as an artist? Like, do you feel like less of an artist when you shoot weddings?
Wow, that's a good
Savage
question. Yeah, that's a good question.
My God, this is a tough question because I think I want to go back to the earliest thing I said, which is like my deep gratitude towards weddings.
Yeah.
So I feel weirdly about this because, like, yes, the answer is yes. I feel, I know that I feel weird about weddings when I have to describe to somebody in the filmmaking world that I shoot weddings, and I listen to the amount of qualifiers I use in my speech, so I know that it feels somehow lesser. There's of lesser integrity, but I don't know where that reaction comes from because we're talking about like the emotional side of this work and like the ego side of this work, and like I recognize inside of the industry when I speak to people like you guys how absolutely proud I am to be like, yo, we made anything out
Yeah.
of that. How incredible are
Yes.
we? We made anything watchable out of that chaos. But when I leave the industry and I'm in the rest of the filmmaking world, it feels stigmatized. It feels like sort of like something you phone in.
Do you think that's their problem or your problem?
Now that I'm saying it out loud, it sounds more like a lack of understanding on their part. They're picturing me as like dad with the tripod on the wheels, and you and I are talking about like hyper subtle things like how we lit something or how we found a beautiful light in a Marriott
How did
hotel.
I create a production with no planning whatsoever?
Right. So I think I think that my heart, for some reason, always defers to feeling that weddings are a lesser form of art. But my brain understands that like you're using 100% of the same skill set that you're also using it at a really higher rate and pace. So it might be in some ways even higher integrity. It's hard to know.
Here's what I feel about it. I think the frustrating part about it is when you think about what you are capable of versus what you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
And I think that is always frustrating. If someone's like, hey, I'm going to get rid of half your tools.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
still going to have to make something.
Yeah.
So that's frustrating artistically. It makes it less satisfying.
Yes.
But the other way to look at it, I was telling you the other day, like, you know, I was listening to David Lynch talking, and he was talking about making films in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
He's talking about how we didn't have any of these things. There's no editing. There's hardly any reshoots. You run out of film. All these things, like you just, the lighting was like 1,000 degrees. How the heck are you gonna? Everyone's sweating constantly, but you have to make them look like they're not sweating. Or you ever watch people in the 30s horror movies where they have a guy with a spotlight the whole time? That's the only way they could light it.
Crazy.
And you're watching all this horrible filmmaking make good films.
Right.
Because, and then the other part about it is this. I think of art as intensely human. And when I look at a lot of the stuff that we make commercially, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It's selling something I don't care about.
Yeah.
It's representing things I don't care about. I care about my clients, but I don't often care even about what we're making. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I don't even use it.
Right.
It means nothing to me. But when I think about a wedding, I'm married. I believe in marriage. I believe in people. And I'm like, you're an artist and you don't want to make this meaningful thing. Of all the things you make, most of the commercial things will mean nothing to anyone.
Right.
But this will mean everything to someone.
Yes.
And it's like, that's art.
Right.
How often do you get to make that? Who else in the world who's making art for a living can say, I made 20 things this year that meant the world to an entire family?
Yeah.
And it's like, that makes me feel like it's art. Because I'm like, this is bringing beauty into the world in a tangible way. It's moving the needle. A lot of the other stuff I do, I don't even know if it's making the world better.
Right.
It's just existing. And I feel good because I made it.
I hear you talk about ego a lot in this podcast, and I think that that's the biggest piece of how do you deal with like making compromises as an artist. And if you check your ego and you say like, hey, I'm serving this couple, and I'm serving marriage, which I believe in, and like I'm serving this family, which I believe in, and I was paid money to try to make it even pretty.
Yeah.
Which is awesome because most people aren't ever asked to be creative at work. They're asked to do their job. They're not asked for what their opinion is on things. And so like the privilege, again, it's the privilege of being able to shoot people's weddings is the critical tool that is the tool to fight back against the inevitable creative challenges that you run into when you say this is not going the way that I want it to go. The strongest tool that you have is an ego check that says like, yes, but inside of the macro, where does this thing that I'm doing today serve? And how does it function within the spectrum of the ways that people are employed in 2019? And you say like, this is on the spectrum of that employment pool. This is way up there in terms of checking a lot of emotional boxes, a lot of meaning boxes, and a lot of like creative fulfillment boxes. And so my method and something that I've been trying to share with other people because I was like a chronically anxious and which would turn into angry wedding videographer, would be that every morning before I go into the first prep location, I like sit in my car and I remind myself to ask this question when I run into my first challenge, which is like, why is this bad? And every time throughout the day that I find myself getting like really, really emotional for the things that we've just discussed that can really rock you during a day, bad light, tough photographers, etc., I stop and say like, why is this bad? Like, what about this intrinsically is bad? And when you run that line of questioning backwards, why is this bad? Because top lighting them is bad. Why is that bad? Because it makes the shadows too strong. Why is that bad? And as you run it backwards, you immediately leave the couple, you immediately leave the story of their love, you immediately leave the majesty of getting married, and you start talking about other videographers' opinions of your shadow information.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
true.
You cannot do that line of questioning and arrive at the couple.
No.
Never.
It always at the best, it arrives at this idea of yourself.
It's
that
what's
you had.
100% how you will be perceived by other people. And so before I had this little toolkit, I would just get super angry. And I would say things like, hey, I have the ability to make something beautiful for this couple. And this thing or this photographer or this environmental factor is stopping me from making the most beautiful thing for them. And so it seemed to me like my anger was rooted in wanting to serve the couple. But when you ask it in a different way, it was serving an ego and a brand look, and it wasn't serving the couple because they would not care.
And it's
about
not
the
like those
shadow
things are
information.
totally unimportant.
No.
They're just not worth destroying your happiness or someone else's happiness.
Right.
And what you do find is like life affords plenty of opportunities to get exactly what you want. You don't need everything to go your way.
Yes.
I think ego definitely plays a role. We were recently, I was in Paris. We did like this kind of stylized shoot, like a proof of concept kind of video. We got a new camera. We're like, let's go try it out. Let's hire a model. Let's do all this stuff. And I hadn't really done that kind of stylized shoot in a while because we're in the middle of wedding season and all this stuff. I think it's, as a creative, it's just a different kind of rush. Like you put together this plan, you have all these steps, you work really hard, and the pre-production, right?
Right.
You're putting all these steps together, and then you execute, and you execute really well. There's a satisfaction in that that you can't get simply by shooting a wedding where everything's out of control. It's like, I'm just along for the ride. If I get these angles, and maybe during the portrait session, I'll hop in and I'll have my little control session.
Right.
But for the most part, it's the satisfaction, I think, as a creative of just, hey, we executed on this and we did it really well. We put this plan together and we knocked
You know
it out
what?
of the
That's
park.
an interesting. I've never really. I know that when we talk about Huxley, we're like, we need pre-production, but that is why it feels sad. Pre-production is what makes production satisfying.
Yeah.
If you don't do
completely.
pre-production, I don't think there's possibility of having a very satisfying. Every once in a while, you have satisfying relationships or a satisfying session, but I never walk away from a wedding feeling. This is maybe just me. I'm always like, I did about myself.
Right.
It's kind of a roll of the dice. Like, I'm so glad we got that good sunset shot.
I always
thank
feel
God.
like we're
lucky.
Did I do a good job? Like I always walk away going like, are people going to find out I truly suck?
Yeah, the classic imposter syndrome
Like,
that everyone faces.
You don't feel that way when you do pre-production because you plan something and you execute it on your plan.
Yeah.
So you're.
I feel that way.
I don't often feel that
because
way.
I'm like, I'm putting all this work in up front. Like I literally have no excuses. At least with weddings, I have an excuse of like, oh, it's just out of control. That's why I can't, But when you are planning, I think it's even more so where you are
I
planning.
would agree with Jared on this.
I don't mind failing.
Yeah.
I don't mind
Pre-production
failing.
says the difference between events and set pre-production cinema world is that like events, you're a hero if you pull something off that's beautiful. In pre-production, it was in the contract that you pull off something beautiful. You said it will look like this, and here are my reference frames, and then everyone's looking at your reference and being like, nah, that's not it.
Yeah.
You missed the mark.
Yeah.
And that is one of them. That's another reason to be so grateful towards event work and stuff like that. Is that like you're given permission?
The bar is much lower.
The bar is lower because if you have a mind for beauty, if you have an eye to be like, hey, that's a really beautiful pocket of light in that weird place, you're thought of as like going above and beyond. And people are like, I'm grateful that you brought some artisanship on top of your correct documentation of the day. You also elevated it. How great. And then in the production world, you said, hey, I'm going to be great. And it's going to look great. And people are they're viewing the final product, and you yourself are viewing the final product with way less grace.
Oh, totally.
You've set a higher bar for yourself, and that feeling of driving home and being like, I don't know if I did it. I feel on productions as well.
Yeah, I
just always
like
feel
the
sad.
idea of
You're real creative, though.
I just like the idea of having definitive things.
Yeah, no, I know.
I don't like the idea of like, this is not an insult to couples. They are going to like it no matter what I do.
It's a video about them.
Yes.
I'll make them happy.
So I like the idea of like, I succeeded or failed.
Right.
And I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with like, we failed. You know right away you failed usually in a production world.
Yep.
You're like, well, we tried this. We did a shoot recently. We had this idea for a shot with this track, and we kept trying the shot, and there was conditions out of our control. I didn't even release the video. I was like, we failed. That video sucked.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not going to release it. It's crap, and I'm not going to release it. And I was frustrated, but what I was happy about is I had concrete knowledge.
Yeah.
I learned something. So next time I'm not going to do that. And sometimes I walk away from weddings and going, what could I have done better? I don't know.
Right.
I hate that feeling. I hate that feeling of like having nothing to grab onto to improve or learn.
Right.
You know, until you sit down in the edit bay, there's always something there. But in general, like with production, not immediately, but often you know at the end of the day, you have that sinking feeling that I screwed up
Right.
or someone else screwed up, and you know it.
100%.
And you're going to call somebody and say, this isn't going to work, or like you got that feeling, and then it makes you so much better. You're improving so quick. I feel like you can shoot for years in weddings and you learn relational tricks, but you're never forced to get better because your mediocrity is good enough.
I don't know. I think if you're your own editor, you have that same feeling. You're just alone with it.
Yeah.
It's a more you're not having that debrief in the car on the ride home and being like, hey, we messed up that production, but you're alone in the
How
edit.
much
and you're
worse
like,
is that?
Yeah.
Sitting alone in your house. It's
you can
horrible.
refer to my previous comment that I'm mostly just sad all the time.
It's horrible. Working with other people is always better.
So yeah, but I think your original question to me was like, what is differentiating
Yeah.
the way I shoot and the way that I deliver and the way that you shoot and the way that you deliver? There might be a healthy amount of distance because Stop Go Love in general has always been a team. And there's joint ownership, so there's joint failure, and there's inside of that there's micro permission to be like, we want to put out a mediocre product, but like, hey, these things happen at weddings, man. Don't worry about it. This is the natural thing that happens at weddings, and like it would be incredibly weird for you to storm out of the editing room and be like, you focus pumped as she walked down the aisle. I hate you for it. You would never even think
Jared,
the thought.
cut this guy off 20
You would
weddings.
never think the thought because it's too small.
Yeah.
The product is delivered. The couple is happy. The whole vibe was not ruined. It wasn't a problem. When it's yourself, you're like, yeah, but I did.
Yeah.
And yet, but it's in there.
Yeah.
What is wrong with me?
And why are you like this? And why can't you not be like this?
Why can't you be perfect?
And so there's something about being
My
your
dad
own,
will never love me.
being your own editor. I think is like it's not pleasant, but it's very, very effective to have that level of what you refer to as like quick growth in the production world. I feel like that happens to me and continues to happen to me all the time.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, like, there's all kinds of mistakes I make when I go back, and I never watch my footage anymore. Like every once in a while, when I try to, but not the way that I would like to. And if I was editing the footage, I would definitely change some things. Because I do it when I look at other guys' footage. I'll walk up to them and I'm like, "Don't shoot like that. I need you to do this." Like, and sometimes I do it with myself too. But I think that's one of for those of you guys that are like, I can't wait to give my edits away. Just get ready to stay exactly the same with your filmmaking.
That's really it.
Like
you gain time and clarity and distance from your work, but your growth will slow down.
You will.
Sure.
It will a lot. You will have to force yourself. So let's just close on just talking a little bit about, what's next for you. Like, where do you see are you in a place of clarity, or do you feel like you're kind of as an artist and as an entrepreneur kind of still, are you comfortable, or do you have a place you want to be that you're like, yeah, I know exactly where I want to be next?
The target does move a lot for me. I discover things and then I get really excited about them. And like, I have a moment where I go like, oh, this changes everything every 6 months, my whole life. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, because I didn't even know that the video, I was a high school teacher 3 years ago. Like, this is just, the world is weird, and life is weird. And I was into other stuff, I thought I was gonna be a musician when I was a kid, and you know what I mean? So like, it's just, it's weird. But presently, I've been really, really enjoying being a DP and working on production sets and completely washing my hands, not only of the edit, but the thought of the edit and not only the production and the directing of the people and envisioning a thing, but actually never even thinking about that after pre-pro and being like, my job is to care about contrast ratios and the way that light wraps and it doesn't wrap, and the way that like we had a certain like vision for how bright the brights would be and what color cast it would be, and like caring about every little bokeh ball in the background and how do we place those there, and like being given a permission to be neurotic and to care deeply about one thing has been so fulfilling that my big plan for the next few years is to be like, I need a huge amount of my life to be spent on film sets as a DP, and it equips me to be able to go to weddings and be like, you know what? This moment isn't the sum of who I am as an artist. This is
That's
one
so
of my
important.
This is one of my
Yes.
this is one of my roles,
Yes.
and this is a role that I'm extremely grateful for because it affords me a lifestyle with my family that I wouldn't be able to get in the production world. But then I can scratch the itch here and not have to have a whole ego-based experience inside of a wedding. Instead of a wedding, I can be more like, let's do the best we can. Let's serve the couple. Let's serve the story. And the DP world be like, your only job here is to be neurotic. So like, let your freak flag fly,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah.
and do that hard here. And
Yeah.
so like, what I've been trying to do moving forward is like take Rangely Films and actually properly brand, something I've never done, and create tiers of videos that are like that offer different stuff, and trying to raise my prices incrementally so that I'm shooting far fewer weddings so that each couple is actually given more attention than I've currently been giving them.
Yeah.
And I'm able to do that because I'm doing more production work. So the current plan is to lean more deeply into the hybrid, but actually allowing me to do DP work at a better capacity and to do weddings at a better capacity by just doing fewer of both of those things.
Yeah.
I think one of the things you said, and we'll kind of close with this, that I think is really important is one of the things I hear people say a lot is, oh, I don't care about business. And we care about business. And one of the reasons we care about business is to create some distance between the art. I need a lot of ways to win to feel happy. The game can't just be rigged on one thing.
Yeah.
It has to be, you have to give yourself, because I've learned that like as a dad, I have to give my kid an opportunity to win. Brushing the teeth has to be a win. So like making everything, trying to satisfy yourself, because we're reward-based animals, right? If you don't create rewards in your life, you won't continue on behaviors if everything feels like a punishment. And so a lot of people, they base their entire self and ego and happiness off of the art. And in one way to make yourself more satisfied with your art is to make yourself satisfied as an entrepreneur and make that part of how you get an identity, because you'll get some wins there. Sometimes you get losses, just like with your filmmaking. But what you're really saying is, well, I want to be a DP because I get a win there.
Right.
Parts of my personalities are rewarded that aren't rewarded in other aspects. For me, I'm not a laid back guy at all. Like, I can be laid back, but it's not.
He looked over at me.
Well, no, he's laid back. I
pretty laid
feel
back.
like
Yeah.
I'm being totally fraudulent when I'm being laid back. It is painful to me. When I get home from weddings, I'm so wired. I'm holding my energy. There are nights I cannot sleep. I stay up all night when I get home because it makes me so. I never realized this, but I'm so anxious.
Right.
But that's my strength because I can bust anybody's chops, and I don't care. That's why I'm successful because I have courage to deal with certain situations, but it's not rewarded at a wedding. So if that was my totality,
Oh,
if
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
if I never got to be a leader, if I never got to direct a team or talk to clients or commit a hard sell or call someone up and say, I'm not doing that for you, I would feel like a bad person. I would feel unrewarded because I'm not being this laid back,
Yeah,
cool
that's interesting.
California guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I'm going to go back, I'll play the part. I want to be a good part of a community and I'm flexible, but at the same time, I give myself opportunities to win in different areas. So I feel satisfied because there are times where I give away myself and that's good for me.
Right.
And there are times where I get to satisfy myself and that's also good for me. And I think that's really what you're saying with like the production work is like the part of you that's the neurotic, detail obsessed artist has to come out.
Yes.
But it's also good for you to give that away sometimes.
Totally. And
I
they
think-
serve each other, right?
Yeah.
Being forced to be make concessions for a 15-hour workday all the time allows you to be a great team player on a production.
Yep.
Where people say like, "Hey, you're going to be detail oriented," and stop.
Yep.
Don't be detail oriented anymore. Now we're going to shoot, and you go like, "Okay, I have a lot of practice being told to stop a lot earlier than this, and so it's still okay, you know." And they serve each other. But like you're right, if your entire identity is wrapped up in one thing, it can be really problematic, and it has been problematic for me up until very recently, where I found a way to diversify my itch scratching.
You didn't even know what you needed.
Yeah.
That's it.
Until you got it. And
Speaking
so,
of not being satisfied, we weren't really able to talk much about gear.
I know.
In this podcast, we'll have to have you back.
Yes.
Because I am interested to pick your brain on a million different techniques and whatnot, which I think would be actually really valuable. But this was awesome, man. Thank you so much
likewise,
for
I had a great
coming up.
conversation.
Yeah,
I'd love to come back and do a
fantastic.
gear conversation because
Yeah.
it's all there's a lot of the same overlap.
yeah, there is. All right, guys. Definitely, if you've made it this far, you've probably already subscribed. But we would really appreciate it if you subscribe, hit the like button, do all that stuff that everyone tells you to do. Also do that for us. Thank you, guys.